Exposed, how a blind date setup turned into an incredible proposal from a single dad CEO. Sarah stared into her half-empty coffee cup, swirling the dregs with an uneasy sigh. The cozy cafe was buzzing with life, yet here she sat, suffocating in her own silence. As a 28-year-old teacher in Chicago's fast-paced environment, where it seemed ambition hung thick in the air, she couldn't shake the feeling of being invisible. Colleagues seemed to dazzle brighter, climbing their respective ladders while she remained tethered by student loan debt like a weight around her neck. Discussions about promotions passed her by, alien, as she grappled with the knowledge that her hard work often went unnoticed. She wondered if her late academic pursuits had dimmed her own shine amid a world that celebrated relentless ambition. The barista glanced her way, and for a brief moment, Sarah suppressed a fleeting urge to run. Instead, she shifted in her chair, thoughts swirling with a mix of anxiety and determination. Tonight was a blind date, orchestrated by her well-meaning friends, to pull her out of her funk. She felt the pressure mounting, blending with the societal whispers, urging her to conform to the timeline of success. What if he saw a failure instead of a passionate teacher? The unseen walls of self-doubt closed in on her, tightening their grasp. As the door swung open, the wind tousled her hair, and in walked Mark, handsome in a way that made her heart quiver. His charming grin, however, was marred by the glint of weariness in his eyes, hinting at his struggles. Maybe he was just another man from the corporate world, sailing smoothly through life while navigating family responsibilities. The moment the cafe settled into their conversation, both were prisoners of their own tension. Small talk danced around work, her seemingly mundane life teaching, while he shared tales of board meetings, glimmers of corporate struggle ghosting his features. But then, as if the air shifted, he spoke earnestly about his daughter and the sacrifices stretching him thin. Suddenly, Sarah found herself captivated, not by ambition, but by raw, unfiltered reality. She shared her aspirations, the system that consistently underestimated and overlooked her. They resonated with the throaty laughter of shared vulnerabilities, and slowly, a warmth ignited between them, casting aside the chaos of the bustling streets just outside. Her heart thawed amidst the talk of lessons and resilience, but the societal pressure set in like a weight on their shoulders. Would they ever escape the binds of expectation, both feeling the heat of judgment creeping ever closer? Before they could treasure this budding connection, tension simmered beneath the surface. Mark's next phone call interrupted their moment, straining their new bond. "We have a serious PR crisis," he said, his voice laced with urgency. With each word, the atmosphere he'd created shattered like fragile glass. Sarah watched as a flicker of panic washed over him, the casual charm fizzling into worry and determination. Everything, his future, his daughter's comfort, hung in this precarious balance. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The looming stress coiled tighter, and Sarah's heart raced. Could their connection survive once time demanded that each of them prioritize greater responsibilities? As Mark looked at her, uncertainty rippled through his features, desperate to find stability amid chaos. Would they crumble under the weight of their realities? Mark picked up the family heirloom he carried, a simple yet profound symbol of trust, ready to intertwine their lives. But just as he leaned in to speak, that damned phone buzzed again. Her breath hitched, hands clenching as she prepared for news that could change everything. Caught between uncertainty and hope, Sarah found herself on the edge, waiting for the moment when love could transform their burdens into strength. As the tension in the cafe shifted under the pressure of unrelenting reality, Sarah sensed a familiar urge bubbling within her, a desire to run, to sever the fragile connection that teetered on the brink of disaster. Instinctively, she reminded herself of her journey as a teacher. She'd faced countless challenges, each student teaching her about resilience, patience, and ultimately, about herself. Could she draw from that same well of strength now? Mark's expression was torn between desperation and a glimmer of hope, a mirror to her own swirling emotions. She unclenched her hands, reminding herself that vulnerability wasn't a weakness. It was part of the shared human experience. Leaning forward, she took a deep breath and absorbed the discomfort creeping into their moment. "What can I do to help?" The words escaped her with unexpected clarity, as though they were a revelation. Mark's eyes flickered with surprise at her offer. "You really want to get involved in this?" he asked, skepticism mingling with curiosity. "Why not?" she replied, emboldened by both fear and possibility. "Your world isn't so different from mine. We both face battles every day." He hesitated for a fraction of a second before acknowledging her resolve. "There's a media outlet shaping a narrative against my company. I need to think of a way to regain control, but I'm struggling to see the right path. Have you considered a fresh narrative? You have an opportunity to redefine what your company stands for, not just in terms of profit, but in the way it impacts lives, especially the community." Sarah's heart raced as she suggested ideas. She had learned the power of storytelling in her classroom. Perhaps that was the perspective needed in this moment. Mark blinked, reflecting on her words, and Sarah felt a swell of determination radiate from within. "You know, as a teacher, I learned that fostering genuine connections can reshape how people view a situation. Maybe you could highlight your charitable initiatives instead of defending your company's image." His gaze softened, a combination of respect and intrigue pouring forth. "You really believe that?" "Absolutely." This was uncharted territory for her, but Sarah felt a conviction driving her forward. "Your daughter, she's a fundamental part of your life, right? Build your narrative around the people you're fighting for, not just the numbers." He studied her, confusion yielding to admiration. "You've got a gift for this, Sarah. Have you ever thought about expanding beyond teaching?" A wave of emotion crashed over her. Here was a man seeing her potential, not just as an educator, but as someone capable of participating in larger conversations. Self-doubt stirred again, but this time she met it head-on. "Maybe I have," she confessed. "But I've always been afraid. Afraid to step out of simply being just a teacher." A silence enveloped them, punctuated only by the distant laughter and chatter surrounding them. Each stared into the other's eyes, straddling the precipice of vulnerability and ambition. What if this moment represented the catalyst for her destiny? The idea thrilled and frightened her. Mark reached for her hand, a decisive act that sent a jolt through her. "Let's do this together, Sarah. I want your voice in this." A rush of adrenaline swept through her, reigniting a deeper yearning for purpose that she had all but tucked away. This blind date had morphed into a profound partnership, but she had to consider the stakes. Her career could falter if she strayed too far from the comforts of her current path. Could she dare to venture into this unknown territory alongside Mark? The prospect loomed like a dark cloud, threatening to obscure her moment of clarity. Could she truly embrace this ambition while maintaining her identity as a nurturing educator? This was not merely about professional gains, it signified a potential awakening of a self she scarcely recognized. As the cafe dimmed, Sarah found herself wrapped in the hum of possibility and dread. With a new determination bubbling within her, she realized the journey ahead would be fraught with challenges and decisions that would test her values and ambitions like never before. What lay ahead would not merely reshape her career, it had the potential to transform her entire life. In that moment, she made a silent promise to herself. She would step forward. It was time to dismantle her own barriers. Could she manage the duality of two demanding worlds, or would her passions and fears ultimately collide? The whirlwind of emotion settled in Sarah as she walked away from the cafe, her heart still racing. The exchange with Mark had unveiled layers of her aspirations buried beneath routines and stagnant security. Each step she took down the sidewalk pulsated with both excitement and uncertainty. Could she truly blend the roles of educator and collaborator in the complex world of corporate strategy? The familiar sight of her classroom loomed ahead, promising the comfort of predictability. Yet the thought of sliding back into her safe little bubble felt constrictive. She had often told her students that true growth required stepping out of comfort zones. Wasn't it time she took her own advice? Inside the classroom, she set about her afternoon with her students, but her mind continued to flicker between their youthful innocence and the stark realities of adult responsibility. As her students dove into their projects, her eyes drifted to the window, where the world beyond buzzed with dynamics that felt impossibly distant, yet invigorating. "Miss Turner?" A small voice broke through her reverie. It was Mia, one of her quieter students, looking up with earnest curiosity. "Are you okay? You seem different today." "Different?" Sarah asked, her voice warm and inviting. "Not bad, just more alive," Mia replied, tilting her head slightly, wisdom belied by her young age. Laughter erupted from the other students, and Sarah felt something inside her shift. Was Mia reflecting the very metamorphosis she feared to embrace? "Maybe I just had a really enlightening conversation this morning," Sarah admitted, a spark lighting her eyes. The afternoon unfolded, but with each passing hour, her thoughts returned to Mark. The narrative they envisioned together had potential, one that challenged their boundaries and invited opportunity for growth. It would mean crafting a message that showcased integrity, impact, and community enhancement, shifting the focus from profit margins to real-life stories of change. As she set up an activity for the students, she snatched opportunities for critical thinking, encouraging them to ask deeper questions. What's more important, the facts in a story or the feelings it evokes? Her students sprang into thoughtful dialogue, dissecting their perspectives. Their passionate discussions gave weight to her resolve. Perhaps this new direction with Mark was just another extension of the work she had always embraced. Teaching was inherently about connection. Similarly, what Mark needed was to break down barriers and create authentic relationships. "You're gonna have to be brave, Miss Turner," whispered Mia as she returned to her desk. There it was again, another reminder of the affinity she shared with those children. Perhaps Mark's struggle mirrored her students' fears of facing the unknown. Each needed a champion to help shape their narratives. In the stillness of preparation after class, she opened her laptop and began researching effective business communication strategies. With each article she devoured, her confidence grew. Ideas flowed freely as she envisioned how she could help Mark, structuring narratives to highlight the human elements often lost amidst corporate jargon. Yet, doubts flickered like shadows threatening to engulf her radical ambition. Somber voices echoed in her mind. "You're just a teacher. You don't belong in that world." But why should those voices dictate her potential? Whether in hallowed halls of academia or the bustling world of business, her core motivations about guiding and uplifting remained unchanged. As daylight faded, Sarah made a pact with herself. She would leverage her gift of storytelling, not only for Mark's cause, but to carve a new niche for herself that transcended conventional teaching. She would not only encourage her students, but inspire herself to embrace this daring journey beyond. That night, as she returned home, her resolve thickened. She fired off a message to Mark, sharing her ideas about structuring the narrative around community impact. As she pressed send, exhilaration coursed through her veins, accompanied by an undercurrent of anxiety that whispered about consequences. But this was it. She was stepping boldly into new territory. Could she find the courage to navigate this complex world while inspiring others? What awaited her and Mark beyond the surface of their proposals? The challenge would reveal itself soon enough, and Sarah felt both anxious and alive, hanging on the precipice between chaos and clarity. What revelations awaited when the stakes significantly raised? The days that followed were marked by an undercurrent of anticipation. Sarah found herself buoyed by her own initiative, but wrestling with an encroaching sense of dread. Embracing a new role hinged on a delicate balance of execution and expression. Each moment in the classroom, once a sanctuary, now pulsated with the contradictory energy of her uncharted aspirations. As she prepared for her upcoming meeting with Mark, Sarah immersed herself in a series of books on corporate communication. Strategies flowed from the pages, igniting her curiosity about an arena so foreign yet familiar. The challenge of distilling complex ideas into accessible narratives aligned closely with her role as an educator. The concept reverberated within her. Her ability to simplify and amplify pivotal truths could influence not just student lives but broader communities. But the churning excitement within was laced with fears that resurfaced in quiet moments. What if her ideas fell flat? What if Mark, in all his corporate wisdom, saw right through her naivety? The nagging voice in her head hissed her doubts like a persistent reminder. Unable to ignore it completely, Sarah recognized that she must confront these fears directly. Decision time approached. She jotted down potential talking points for her initial meeting with Mark, looking to weave not just facts but emotional resonance into her proposals. She wrote, "Focus on authentic experiences. Relate through stories." Each note served as a lifeline to quell her insecurities. The day of the meeting arrived, and anticipation knotted her stomach. Sarah stood in front of the mirror, adjusting her blazer. Who would she be in this space? An educator stepped into the world of business, a melding of identities she had only imagined. As she prepared for the conversation, the echoes of her students' voices surged back to her. They embodied the belief that every voice mattered. They expectantly gazed at her, hungry for authenticity. Arriving at the conference room, Sarah spotted Mark, his energy filling the room with quiet confidence. He greeted her with a warm smile that eased some of her anxiety. As they settled into their discussion, Sarah presented her ideas with determination, weaving in her thoughts on the stories that could resonate more broadly than the data points he was used to. Mark listened intently, nodding as she spoke. He interjected with questions, challenging her to explore deeper. "What's the emotional takeaway for the audience?" he asked, and she paused, realizing how fundamental that question was to both her teaching and her new role. Engaged in this dynamic exchange, Sarah felt the rhythm of the conversation shift into a dance. Each anecdote she shared not only illustrated her points, but also fostered a connection between them, a partnership building in real time. With each detail, her confidence burgeoned, and those earlier fears began to dissipate like mist with the dawn. As the meeting wrapped up, Mark leaned back, assessing her with a keen gaze. "You've got something here, Sarah. It's refreshing to see such perspective. The way you connect ideas through stories might be just what we need." His affirmation sent a surge of exhilaration through her. This was not merely a business meeting. It felt like a validation of her potential. Yet she also sensed a challenge lurking beneath the surface of his praise. Was this a stepping stone into a world she yearned to explore, or a prelude to imminent risk? Walking away from the meeting, Sarah reflected on the road ahead, brimming with possibilities. However, a cloud of uncertainty hung above her. What would she have to sacrifice to navigate this new terrain? As she settled down to draft an outline based on their discussion, her phone buzzed with a message from Mark. "We need to strategize further. How about lunch next week?" Her heart raced. Potential collaboration loomed tempting and terrifying. How deeply would she want to immerse herself in this world? And more importantly, would she be prepared for the challenges that lay in wait as the stakes continued to rise? Sarah's heart raced as she stared at the blinking cursor on her screen, the weight of Mark's message pressing down on her like a heavy stone. The lunch meeting loomed ahead, promising to deepen her plunge into uncharted corporate waters, but also amplifying the nagging doubts she wrestled with. It wasn't merely about presenting ideas anymore. It was about establishing her presence and credibility in a world that felt vast and intimidating. She took a deep breath, reminding herself that the same principles that guided her in education, authenticity, engagement, empathy, were equally valuable in business. That thought grounded her. She began with a clear intention. Every interaction with Mark was an opportunity not just to share her insights, but also to glean from his experience. Sarah approached the lunch date as if it were a critical lesson for her students. Preparation was key. Armed with her notes, she outlined discussion points, but also left space for spontaneity, allowing the conversation to evolve naturally. To cultivate confidence, she practiced in front of the mirror, adopting a tone she intended to portray. Enthusiastic yet composed. As she stepped into the restaurant, the familiar scent of roasted garlic mingled with an air of professional intrigue. Mark was already seated, and as she joined him, the warm smile he offered grounded her swirling thoughts. They exchanged pleasantries, yet Sarah's mind whirled as she considered how this man, a CEO embodying success, had potential answers to questions that kept her awake at night. "Let's get right to it," Mark suggested, his tone encouraging yet commanding attention. "I remember your point about storytelling. How can we use that to shift our branding?" In that moment, a veil lifted. This wasn't just a surface-level inquiry. It was an invitation to push boundaries. "Stories resonate because they humanize data," Sarah replied, tapping into that teacher's instinct, which thrived on engagement. "For our audience to connect with our message, we need to show real-life implications of what we offer. For instance, illustrating how our services improve lives makes the message compelling. We need not just facts, but the heart behind those facts." Mark nodded, his expression thoughtful as he leaned in. "That's a compelling perspective, different from what we commonly approach, but can you envision concrete examples that we could explore?" For the next hour, the initial excitement of her pitch transformed into an invigorating brainstorming session. Sarah began to visualize campaigns steeped in narratives that demonstrated transformations rather than bare statistics. She had lost herself in the construct of her thoughts. Ideas collided, morphing into tangible concepts they could develop further. With each suggestion that flowed from her lips, she felt a burgeoning self-assurance, a realization that she was more than a guest in this process. She could contribute meaningfully. But amidst the exhilaration, unsettling thoughts lurked. Reflecting on the depths of her passion and intelligence left her grappling with a whisper of unease. Was she truly equipped to lead such a shift? An internal clock ticked away, each tick echoing with uncertainty. As lunch wrapped up, Sarah felt a cautious joy mixed with trepidation. Mark's excitement was contagious, yet the stakes were becoming more evident. "I see potential here," Mark said, leaning back, a glimmer of approval in his eye. "Let's flesh this out into a proposal next week. How do you feel about leading this initiative?" Sarah's breath hitched, her pulse quickening. Lead a project? An intense wave of anxiety washed over her as the enormity of that request settled. In her heart, she longed to seize the opportunity, but doubt clawed at her resolve. On one hand, the prospect was exhilarating, the chance to propel herself into leadership, to carve her niche in this new blending of education and corporate work. On the other, the path loomed with potential pitfalls, demanding more than she thought she could muster. "I need to reflect on that," she replied, her voice steady yet unsure. "Can I get back to you?" Mark smiled, his understanding evident. "Of course. Take your time to ponder. Just know the door is open." As Sarah left the restaurant, the cool air did little to chill her racing thoughts. This was it, the critical juncture where ambition met self-doubt. The choice weighed heavily on her. Would she rise to the occasion or retreat into her comfort zone? As she walked, her feet forged a path, each step a silent negotiation between courage and caution. In the days that followed, Sarah battled her internal demons. The tug-of-war between seizing opportunities and playing it safe intensified. Just as she thought she was ready to commit to the endeavor, she received a text from Mark that sent panic rushing back. "We need to finalize the deadline for this proposal. How soon can you present it?" A sinking feeling filled her. The moment of decision hovered ominously ahead. Would she step into the light or let her fears dictate the course of her future? The pressure to decide loomed large, the stakes higher than ever. Sarah knew the time had come to face that truth. Both the exhilarating and daunting possibilities of leading this initiative lay before her like an open door, waiting for a push. The message from Mark felt like a ticking clock echoing in her mind, each word a reminder of the urgency pressing against her. As Sarah paced her small apartment, the walls seemed to close in, amplifying her spiraling thoughts. She had always thrived in structured environments, but the corporate world was a labyrinth where the paths were less defined, filled with choices demanding both courage and clarity. In the silence of her living room, she confronted herself, probing her fears directly. What if she stumbled over her words? What if the team dismissed her ideas as naive? The very thought of being the focal point of scrutiny unnerved her, yet something within yearned to break free from the shackles of apprehension. She sank into a chair, taking a moment to breathe deeply, to refocus. Teaching had equipped her more than she realized. It had instilled in her the resilience to adapt, to turn challenges into learning experiences. It shifted her perspective. Perhaps leading this initiative wasn't about perfection or instant success, but rather an opportunity to learn and grow, just like she encouraged her students to do. As she contemplated her next steps, the flicker of a plan ignited. She grabbed her notebook and began to jot down potential ideas for the proposal. "If I'm going to do this," she thought, "I need a solid strategy." The act of writing grounded her frenetic mind. Words transformed into tangible elements she could manipulate. She envisioned a dual approach, a detailed presentation outlining her ideas, complemented by a storytelling aspect that could showcase their potential. For every campaign concept she developed, she would append a narrative, a case study, or a hypothetical scenario that illustrated the impact of those ideas. By merging analytical thinking with emotional resonance, she hoped to embody the qualities she cherished as a teacher. Yet, even as her plans took shape, doubt lingered like a persistent shadow. What will the team think? The question echoed, stirring an old fear of inadequacy. The corporate environment operated differently than an academic one. Here, she must wield authority and assertiveness. How could she negotiate that new identity while honoring her authentic self? As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting her room in hues of orange and purple, clarity washed over Sarah. She decided to reach out to a few trusted colleagues, people she admired within the company. Authentic feedback could be invaluable. It would not only refine her proposal, but also bolster her confidence. After all, collaboration was key, a lesson she learned in the classroom that often extended beautifully into the professional realm. With newfound determination, she crafted an email, inviting her colleagues for a casual brainstorming session. "Let's tap into our collective experience," she wrote. "I'd love to gather diverse perspectives on a proposal I'm developing that encompasses storytelling and branding." Sending the message felt liberating, a step into the future she feared but wanted more than anything. The act of reaching out transformed her apprehension into a proactive stride. She saw it as a rehearsal for the presentation, a chance to refine her pitches while cultivating a support network. As she lay in bed that night, anticipation chased away her anxiety. Her phone buzzed beside her. It was Mark's reply, acknowledging her request to think before committing and expressing enthusiasm for her brainstorming initiative. A glow of warmth spread through her. Here was a mentor who believed in potential, who dared to invest in her growth. This only solidified her resolve. But deep inside, whispers still lingered. With the meeting fast approaching, she remained aware that this was merely the beginning. Would she be able to translate her thoughts into a compelling narrative? Would her colleagues respond with the same zeal she felt? As sleep beckoned, she grasped the immensity of what lay ahead. Over the next few days, she would mold her vision, but it dawned on her that even as she ventured into unknown territory, she was ready to carve her place. Each encounter would be a test of her commitment, a reaffirmation of her capabilities. Sarah closed her eyes, letting the tension of uncertainty blend with a burgeoning excitement. The moment awaited her, an opportunity to redefine her path. Yet the question loomed larger than ever. Could she truly embrace her role as a leader and bring her vision to life? The clock was ticking, and the moment to prove herself was drawing near. As the days progressed, Sarah immersed herself in preparation. Her brainstorming session loomed, and it was essential to maximize its potential. She scoured her resources, seeking inspiration in marketing blogs and case studies that illustrated the power of storytelling in branding. Each article she absorbed felt like additional armor against the self-doubt that constantly loitered in the back of her mind. Her colleagues, known for their creativity and insight, offered a breadth of experience she greatly respected. Sarah meticulously cataloged their strengths. Emma wielded a knack for turning dry statistics into compelling narratives, while James had an innate talent for visual presentation, effortlessly creating concepts that left a lasting impact. Sarah saw this collaborative effort not just as a means to excel. I'm nurturing a rich tapestry of ideas. It was also a move to foster camaraderie, to build an environment where input was not only appreciated but celebrated. As the meeting day approached, butterflies of apprehension danced in her stomach. The prospect of her colleagues evaluating her ideas struck a chord of vulnerability. What if they dismiss my vision outright? This fear pulsated through her, a raw reminder of the profound difference between the comfort of a classroom and the unpredictable dynamics of corporate brainstorming. On the morning of the meeting, clouds hung low in the sky, a reflection of her uncertainty. In the mirror, she reaffirmed her resolve, practicing greetings and entrance lines. You're not pitching a project, you're inviting them into your vision, she told herself, emphasizing the collaborative nature of the endeavor. She chose a bright blouse, knowing that visual representation can in itself bolster confidence, while softening her nerves. The conference room buzzed when Sarah entered, a mixture of familiar faces and open minds ready for dialogue. Mark greeted her with a nod, a reassurance that everything would come together. As she settled her materials on the table, each colleague's eyes met hers, an unspoken agreement promising a productive session. When the time came, Sarah stood to present. Thank you all for being here. This is very much a team effort. Her voice wavered slightly but shifted as she breathed in and forged ahead. She unveiled her ideas methodically, weaving facts and figures with the rich narratives she had researched. The energy shifted in the room as she projected her passion, leaning into her narrative framework and demonstrating how potent storytelling could enhance the campaign's impact. Midway through, she fostered an open space for comments. Suddenly, feedback came flooding in. Questions, optimistic suggestions, even critiques that felt like growing pains rather than obstacles. Each moment felt like a small breakthrough, like bricks foundationally stacking up under her vision. Yet, a seed of distress clawed at her mind. In one exchange, James challenged her concept robustly. What's the unique angle that sets us apart? That fierce competitive edge we need? His words ignited a defensive reaction within her, a panicky urge to retreat. But Sarah seized the moment, recognizing it as an opportunity rather than an attack. That's precisely the narrative I'm trying to cultivate, she countered, her tone measured. It's about more than just facts. It's about emotion, authenticity, connecting with our audience in a way competitors haven't. Our story can engage on a deeper level, sparking a reaction that numbers alone never could. The conversation shifted, moving from critique to discussion, ideas building upon ideas. Sarah realized that, although she had felt cornered by doubt, in that exchange lay discovery. As the meeting wrapped up, her colleagues' enthusiasm resonated like a melody, a harmony she had envisioned but never experienced before in this context. They had cultivated a shared investment in her proposal, their collective input reshaping her initial concept into something greater than she had ever imagined. However, as she stepped away from the conference room, exhilaration soon slashed through with another wave of reality. Gaining support was just the beginning. Translating that momentum into a compelling proposal for higher management loomed ahead. Would she be able to channel the energy in the room, extract the magic, and deliver a presentation that stood strong against scrutiny? The stakes felt higher than ever. The clock was ticking once more, tightening the space around her ambitions and fears. Could she transform this nascent idea into a proposal that would dazzle, rather than falter under pressure? Each moment counted, and there was no turning back now. The days that followed the brainstorming session were a whirlwind of activity and urgency. Sarah felt the palpable shift in her energy as she toyed with her refined proposal, now imbued with the insights garnered around the conference table. The exhilaration of her colleagues' support energized her creatively, yet with every hour that passed, the enormity of the task loomed larger. Sitting in her home office, cluttered with notes and coffee cups, Sarah felt the fingers of anxiety tighten around her throat. How could I take their enthusiasm and make it resonate with management? The thought nagged at her. She had never presented to such a high-stakes audience before, let alone to those with the power to greenlight or squash her ideas. The usual strategy she had employed in her daily tasks now felt inadequate. Late one night, Sarah powered on her laptop, her usual time of clarity. She scanned the notes she and her colleagues had shared, sifting through their vibrant conversations. Each line seemed to shimmer with potential. The velocity of ideas flowing back and forth filled her mind with concepts for visual and narrative frames. Yet her gaze drifted to a blank corner of her screen, where the name Management Proposal loomed like a daunting specter. In that moment of quiet reflection, she had an epiphany. It wasn't only about delivering information, it was about translating that collective energy into something dynamic. Sarah grabbed a notepad and began to draft the key points she needed to cover. With each bullet, she instinctively broke down the narrative into 3 essential segments: identification of the problem, articulating the unique solution, and showcasing her team's strategic vision. How can we elevate our current brand story to captivate our audience and differentiate ourselves? She thought of Emma's ability to morph mundane statistics into engaging tales, spiraling the numbers into gripping narratives that transcended the baseline data. Sarah jotted down specific examples of how previous campaigns suffered from a lack of emotional engagement. Facts never sufficed. What people remembered was the feeling a narrative left behind. A succinct but powerful hook, emotion over data, danced in her mind, and she smiled faintly as confidence cascaded through her veins. Yet the persistent fear lingered. Would this new approach resonate with the executives? They were notorious for their no-nonsense demeanor. She had seen them dismiss even the most innovative ideas if they felt disconnected from bottom-line results. Would they even entertain a proposal clad in the coat of storytelling? Over the next few days, her focus sharpened into laser precision. She mapped out her visuals, meticulously pairing slides with compelling anecdotes to illustrate her points. James's visual mastery became the lifeblood of her presentation, and drawing on their collaborative efforts, she practiced her delivery until her message flowed seamlessly, blending passion with professionalism. But then, another fear crept in. What if her personal biases colored her interpretation of their ideas? What if, in her drive to highlight the narrative aspect, she overshadowed the analytical angles that were equally vital? In the quiet of her room, she faced herself. Vulnerabilities could manifest as strengths, she reminded herself. Perhaps opening up about her journey, the doubts that had trailed her throughout the process, could cultivate connection, something she believed in deeply. Days turned into sleepless nights, and as the proposal deadline approached, the tension in her chest tightened. She had transformed her ideas into an exciting narrative, yet doubt whispered about the readiness of her heart to present them. The looming reality of judgment danced on the edges of her thoughts. On the eve of the presentation, after hours of rehearing under the fabricated spotlight of her lamp, she felt oddly calm. Armed with her narrative and strategies, she prepared to face the impending scrutiny, recognizing that both her story and her team's contributions could merely tip the scales toward greatness. In the early hours of the morning, the hum of the city came alive outside her window, a sprawling tapestry of ambition and purpose. As she locked the final details in her mind, she steeled herself for the arduous task ahead. Sarah knew this was more than a presentation. It was a testament to not just her capabilities, but to what they could build together as a team. The hour was drawing near when her phone chimed. A message flashed on the screen, a reminder for her meeting that day. With its arrival, she felt the familiar pulse of adrenaline surge. A new realization flickered to life inside her. It wasn't merely about delivering ideas. It was time to defend the vision she had cultivated. As she gathered her materials and steeled herself to step out the door, she paused, wondering if she was ready to unleash this new iteration of herself in front of management. But the truth smacked her squarely in the face. Preparation may guide her, but it was courage that would vault her into the extraordinary. And then, that precise moment of resolve washed over her. Armed with passion and a uniquely authentic narrative, Sarah understood the ultimate test lay not in the proposal itself, but in the journey of her unfolding potential. Would her presentation not only pass muster, but also inspire trust in a story waiting to be told? The answer hung tantalizingly out of reach as she closed the door behind her, moving forward into a future vivid with possibility, ever conscious of the threshold she was poised to cross. The conference room felt sterile, the air thick with anticipation, as Sarah took her place at the head of the long table, surrounded by the esteemed executives who had the power to bring her vision to life, or snuff it out in an instant. She inhaled deeply, feeling the weight of eyes on her, and forced herself to center her thoughts. This was it. Years of hard work, sleepless nights, and self-doubt had led her to this pivotal moment. As she clicked her remote, the first slide illuminated the screen. It beckoned to her like a seraphic portal, drowning out the familiar cacophony of doubts swirling in her mind, the what-ifs threatening to unravel her confidence. She began with the problem, market stagnation. The statistics danced on the screen, but she quickly followed with stories of actual customers and their frustrations, their hopes, for only through their narratives could the executives grasp the urgency of her proposal. "The numbers tell us one thing," she stated, allowing a calm conviction to seep into her tone. "But the stories behind those numbers tell us why we need to change." The flicker of intrigue in the executives' eyes, as they shifted in their seats and leaned forward, was a signal that her strategy was working. Sarah pivoted to the solutions, layering data with emotional narratives. Each anecdote woven into her presentation sparked a visceral reaction, a testament to the power of combining logic with emotion. As she spoke of the impacts of their failed past campaigns, she saw nods of acknowledgement, mirroring her realization that everyone at the table understood the stakes. They were no longer just numbers, they were challenges she shared with them, appealing to their collective stakes. But even as enthusiastic engagement enveloped her, a gnawing doubt nudged at the fringe of her mind. Was she compelling enough? Were the stories powerful enough to overshadow their analytical inclinations? Her heart raced, picking up the tempo as project milestones and metrics unraveled in her head, but she pushed it away, harnessing that energy into her presentation. Suddenly, a familiar face stood out among the executives. CEO Mark, known for his hard exterior and unwavering skepticism. His reputation for dismantling proposals with razor-like precision added a sharp edge to Sarah's anxiety. She had seen it happen too many times, brilliant ideas squashed under the weight of calculated criticism. As she continued, she couldn't shake the feeling that he was waiting, ready to pounce on any misstep she made. But a surge of determination swept over her. This was more than just sales data. This was the embodiment of her team's spirit, their collective dream. With every word, she fused her message with truth. Truth in her convictions, truth in their efforts. "It's time we stop viewing our customer base in abstract terms," she urged, voice steady, "and start recognizing them as the living, breathing individuals that they are." The room fell silent, the words hanging above them like weighted clouds. This was her moment of reckoning. She steeled herself, opening the door to her vulnerabilities. "I understand the risks," she continued, "but I also know that we risk losing our connection with our customers if we choose to overlook their stories. As professionals, it's our duty to go beyond the data. We must embrace emotion if we want to truly connect." The atmosphere shifted, and Sarah could feel the tension crackle as Mark's steely gaze scrutinized her. She gathered the strength to meet his stare, ready to expose not just her proposal, but the passion behind it. Just then, he interjected, "What are you willing to sacrifice for this narrative approach, Sarah? How much of our resources and time do you propose we risk on emotional engagement?" The direct challenge sent a shockwave through her. This wasn't merely a judgment of her proposal. This was an interrogation of her very philosophy. Sarah took a breath. This was it. The time had come to face the very doubts that had led her to this moment, to confront her past hesitations with authentic courage. The eyes of the room bore witness as she grappled to frame her response. Her heart raced. She had anticipated questions, but had not prepared for this. It was an existential challenge to her newfound identity as a storyteller. Would she cling to the comfort of statistics, or risk it all for a belief in the transformative power of emotional connection? Even she wasn't certain what answer awaited her. "I'm prepared to explore new horizons," she finally announced, the steadiness of her voice surprising her. "This isn't just about pitching a proposal, it's about redefining how we engage with the world. If we truly want to connect, then yes, I'm willing to gamble on emotion, because I believe our brand can become more than just a name, it can become a story." A hush fell over the room. She held her breath, anticipating Mark's response. The air crackled with tension as she awaited his verdict, feeling the weight of her convictions like an anchor drawing her deep into unknown waters. This encounter would morph not just her proposal, but her entire approach to professional challenges, shaping who she would become in her career and personal journey. The lesson hung palpably in the air, a fragile thread of possibility twisted around uncertainty. Would her audacity ignite a recognition of potential they had yet to grasp? Or would it mark the beginning of a deeper conflict that exposed her vulnerabilities in a way she had yet to confront? With her heart pounding, Sarah stood in the conference room, weighted by the gaze of Mark and the other executives. Each second stretched as she awaited response, the silence suffocating, yet charged with potential. She had bared her soul, intertwining her personal truth with the essence of her proposal. It was no longer just about selling an idea. It was an authentic representation of herself, daring them to see beyond numbers and spreadsheets. After what felt like an eternity, Mark leaned back in his chair, contemplation etched on his face. The room pulled in collective breaths, waiting for his assessment. "You are saying that the emotional connection we build can enhance our bottom line?" he queried, piercingly serious. "Exactly," Sarah articulated, her voice steady despite the tremor of adrenaline coursing through her. "When people feel connected to us through narratives that resonate, they invest more than money. They invest their loyalty. Isn't that worth the risk?" Mark said nothing for a moment, but the flicker of understanding behind his eyes began to yield a glimmer of respect. "You're advocating for a fundamental shift, Sarah," he finally responded, an edge of admiration mingling with his typical stoic demeanor. "This isn't simply a matter of marketing, it's about rethinking what drives people's choices. If we can merge that with our analytical insights, we may establish a pioneering approach." The spark ignited immediately. Conversations erupted among the executives, a wave of enthusiasm. They riffed off Sarah's bold vision, building upon it, exploring how her narrative could create a sense of community around the brand. For the first time, she realized the potential not just of her proposal, but of her voice, an ally in forging connections that transcended numbers. As the dialogue and energy shifted, Sarah could hardly believe the transformation unfolding before her. The weight of her earlier fears began to dissolve, replaced with a heady mix of realization and exhilaration. She was carving a space for herself, staking her claim within this corporate landscape that had once felt so foreign. Mark's demeanor changed, his expression shifting from skepticism to supportive engagement. "You bring a fresh perspective, Sarah," he said, leaning forward. "Your ability to capture these narratives can shape our strategy moving forward. I want you to lead this initiative. Your concept for the new campaign needs to be prioritized. Can we count on you to flesh this out?" A tumult of emotions rushed through her, waves of triumph competing with the rush of responsibilities now laid at her feet. She had gained recognition, not just as a teacher, but as a pivotal player in this corporate landscape. "Yes," she affirmed, voice strong and confident. "I'll ensure this vision comes to life." As the meeting wrapped up and remarks of encouragement echoed, Sarah felt a shift deep within her. The blend of intellectual and emotional engagement she had always sought in the classroom was echoing in this new arena. She was not only stepping forward, but evolving into a professional who could bridge both worlds. In the days that followed, as Sarah began to lead the project, she felt invigorated. No longer tethered solely to her identity as a teacher, she embraced the narrative-driven marketing approach, teaching the team how best to articulate their own stories. This collaboration transformed them into a unified force, each voice contributing to a larger purpose. Her redefined success was tangible. The accolades from her colleagues and management, the tangible impact of their campaign on the community, and the cascading recognition she received. Sarah found herself invited to leadership meetings, her insights valued as much as anyone else's. Through her initiative, she witnessed not only growth in her career, but a deepening of her own self-worth, shedding the self-doubt that had lingered for so long. Years later, as she reflected on that pivotal day, each moment encapsulated in her journey, a realization was clear. The inherent duality of being a teacher and now a leader blended seamlessly within her. The emotional connection she had strived to instill in her students became the cornerstone of her work in the corporate world, forging narratives that propelled not just success, but fulfillment. As Sarah stood before her class of students, now a mentor in every sense, she saw in their eyes the same spark she had once felt. She was proof that stepping into the unknown could yield extraordinary rewards. An entire universe of opportunity blossomed when one dared to uncover their true potential. With her heart full, she smiled at her students, knowing she had conquered her fears and transformed her narrative into a powerful story of achievement. This was her legacy, grounded in connection, authenticity, and bravery. She welcomed the future, fueled by the lessons learned in both her professional and personal life. A life not merely defined by accomplishments, but by meaningful relationships built along the way. In honor of that transformative experience, Sarah would forever advocate daring to embrace vulnerability as the pathway to true growth. Now is the time for you to embrace your own transformation. You need to subscribe now to ensure that you never miss another exclusive emotional story. Leave a like now to support the channel. You have the power to light up the algorithm. Comment below with your thoughts and theories about this empowering conclusion. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness the power of personal overcoming stories. Your support could inspire someone else to embrace their journey today.